The unit plan is anchored in a social studies standard, so we're looking at the causes that led up to the Revolutionary War, particularly looking at the colonists' pursuit for freedom for the Declaration of Independence. We are marrying that with reading and writing of looking at text structure, so cause and effect, how one thing led to another, problem and solution, as well as incorporating opinion-based writing. And ultimately, at the end of the projects, the students write an opinion essay where they have a proposal of how they'd like to redesign our classroom so that they can have more power, more independence, and more voice. And they present those ideas both to me and the administration.
Good morning, Miss Perryman's class.
Good morning, Dr. Foster.
Oh, I'm so excited to see y'all this morning. Are y'all excited to see me?
Yeah.
Well, I've got some news. I had to make an executive decision. As an administrator in the building, you know, sometimes I have to make those tough decisions. So at this time, starting tomorrow, you guys have lost your privilege to go on the playground.
Part of the unit plan with the introduction or the entry event was to make this as real as possible for students, so to make them feel as if they were having a similar plight to what the colonists were going through in the Revolutionary War. So we did have our assistant principal come in, and she took away their recess. She took away the equipment, and it sort of organically unraveled where students started to make the connection between what the vice principal was taking away, their rights and freedoms, and what was happening to the colonists. So it kind of kicked it off with high energy level, high emotional level, and from there we helped kids bridge that connection between what was happening in the past and what is happening now.
Yes, sir.
Did we do something wrong to lose a recess?
No, your grade level is just the largest grade level in the building, and I'm trying to preserve the playground equipment. Yes, Cammie.
Will we ever get it back?
At this time, I've not made that decision.
For social studies, I use heterogeneous grouping, so students actually get to elect when they want to work with me. So they have to see me at one point throughout that week, but I do the same mini lesson for each small group, and they can choose when to come to me based on their needs. So it's a little more open for the students. They do have to see a teacher, but they do get to select when they want to work with me. We are learning about the French and Indian War and the Proclamation of 1763. I'd like for you to read both passages, and as you're reading, I'd like you to think of the focus question: was King George justified in creating the Proclamation of 1763? So as you're reading, I want you to stop, I want you to talk to each other. What evidence supports the idea that he was justified, or is there no evidence that supports the idea that he's justified for creating the Proclamation of 1763. We're going to work in partners. I want you to discuss and deliberate with your team, and then we'll share as a table group and compare our answers. Ready? Go.
Indian War, the British drove.
The small group, where we're looking at the French and Indian War and the Proclamation line, the students read two passages. They read them in partners, and we generally read them twice. So they read them with an initial lens, and the initial lens that they read it with was the king justified in establishing that proclamation line? And of course we have to talk about what justified even means, and we have that conversation. And so they read with a partner, and they start dialoguing and collaborating and having a conversation about what evidence supports that proclamation line. Once we've sort of had that discussion, we break apart into a simulation and we sort of act it out. I divided my students into, some of them were British soldiers and some of them were colonists, and we reenacted the whole piece, and I sort of probed them to ask them, how would we act this out? What pieces, what evidence would support this simulation? And then once we've done that, we've acted out, we sit back at the table and we sort of reflect on the multiple perspectives that are operating within that period in time. So as we just acted out the proclamation line, what did we think? You two were the British soldiers. How do you feel after we acted it out?
I feel like the British soldiers shouldn't be with the colonists, protecting the colonists, because they should be home with their families preparing for war if a huge war does come up, and the colonists should never cross the line.
What do you think?
Well, I think the same thing as him, and us soldiers, we're having to pay for all this equipment.
Cause and effect was introduced initially within our social studies block of time. So we talked about how one event led to the other, and we talked about how we would determine if it was cause and effect versus problem and solution, and carefully examining the events that we'd already studied in social studies. And then we moved those events or applied them into small groups for reading, where we read a passage, and we began by just doing an initial read of identifying the text structure, and then we moved from talking about why would the author organize the information in this way, what was the purpose of it, what was the author trying to convey, and looking at it from a little bit more rigorous vantage point. So we've been looking closely at examining how an author structures a text to organize information and convey information. So we've been reading this passage. I would like for you to reread the section Expert Divers and do two things as you're reading independently. The first thing I want you to do is identify, where does the author utilize cause and effect? You can highlight those components with your highlighter. Once you've done that, I want you to start thinking about why the author structured the text in that way. Why did they organize it as a cause and effect to provide that information? After we have examined the author's intention of structuring the text in that way, then generally we discuss that, or the kids, after we've talked about it verbally, the kids work on a collaborative Google Doc where they're in partners, and they construct an argument for why the author would have structured the text in that way using evidence to support their claims. And it's on a collaborative doc so they can all see each other's writing, so they're all kind of writing on the same document and then providing feedback to one another. So it's an opportunity for them to compare their writing and their thinking and practice articulating what happened in small groups.
Task and just start thinking about food. If you have free snacks, people are allowed to have snacks. And if they didn't bring a snack, they wouldn't have a snack, so they can stay focused.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What? Y'all aren't excited to see me?
No.
Why not?
You took our recess.
Oh, too bad for you.
Simulations and role playing was a huge piece of this unit plan. We wanted students to organically kind of see the connection between what was happening to the colonists and how that could be connected to their real world lives. So a lot of the simulations were based on simulating things from the past, but then which helped them step into the shoes of the colonists and feel what they're feeling. And then from those experiences, we could have conversations about how does it connect to our lives. And because they had to act it out and role play it and take on different perspectives, they were able to make those connections between the past and present a little bit more than they could if we just read it from a textbook.
I'm here in order to make good on my promise, so you guys can earn time on the playground if you pay your taxes. So taxes are money that you pay me in order to get your privilege back. Remember, the playground is a privilege that I give to you. So in order to go back outside, you need to pay your taxes. I need 1 token per child. And I don't have all day, so hurry up.
Students receive tokens based on behavior. And I did not utilize these tokens prior to this project, but we realized that if we were going to simulate taxation, we had to have something that we set up from the very beginning of the school year that was so valuable to them. So all of the teachers on our grade level started using tokens for behavior, and they were not given out all the time. So the kids really had to earn them, and they used those tokens and they could buy something out of the treasure box, and these were very nice things that they could get. So they really treasured their tokens. They had them in bags, they had them in their little purses, and so when Dr. Foster does come and tax them, that was probably the most emotional part for them because they have worked hard to earn them. So we set that up. We started staging that from the very beginning of the year so that when they were taken away, it had an emotional resonance with them.